and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the MegaCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the MegaCast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the MegaCast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the MegaCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books offered by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get rolling.
Well, I hope you are ready for this, because today we are talking about protecting and securing cloud environments. Sometimes we silo our approaches to securing our databases, protecting the cloud or clouds we rely on, as well as our business operations and practices. However, the seamless flow of information and communication in our organizations is incredibly important, and ensuring that data and operations are secure and compliant is indeed the challenge at hand. Luckily, the awesome folks at CyberArk, Rubrik, Lacework, and TierPoint have sent some of their top experts to help us navigate this conversation and share the best tools and strategies to achieve a protected and secure cloud environment and make this implementation super seamless and get you on the road to cloud wonderfulness. This is going to be a great day, and I can't wait to get started. So let's dive in. Let me start by saying hi. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy, and I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. And my fellow moderators, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward, are all here today doing some live chat throughout the MegaCast. Plus, Keith will be introducing some of our teams and wrapping up the MegaCast today, so it'll be a dream come true. Now, let's talk prizes. I know you're all waiting for that. I saw one comment chanting PS5 in the questions tab already. Today on the MegaCast, you could win one of 5 PlayStation 5 consoles, and we are giving away a $300 Amazon gift card every 30 minutes. Not only that, there is a best question gift card, $50 that will be assigned or given out for the best question in each session. So please do add some mindful questions throughout each presentation today. And as mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about the prizes. And hey, with that last little thing, I believe we are ready to rock. Today, we have got Melissa Palmer opening up today's MegaCast with a timely keynote to get you all thinking about the topic at hand. Melissa, I'm excited to hear what you have for us today, so I'm going to cut right to it and hand the stage over to you. Take it away, Melissa.
Thanks, Actual Tech Media team. I'm really excited to talk to you about protecting and securing your cloud environments today. Now, this is probably one of the hottest topics going around lately, since just about everybody is using the cloud in some way, shape, or form. You might be all in on cloud and just cloud native at this point, but there's also other cloud architectures too. You may be multi-cloud using different cloud providers, or maybe a hybrid cloud where you still have your on-prem data centers. These are some of the biggest, hottest cloud architectures today. And it's really important that when we're using a cloud architecture, we take the steps ahead of time we need to make sure we protect and secure it. So before we talk about how the key points are that we should protect our cloud environments, I wanted to set the stage a little bit more and get us all in the right mindset and on the same page. I want to understand how important it is to secure it, and I want to give you some good examples on why. If you know me at all, you might know me as a bit of a cloud skeptic. Now, I wouldn't say I hate the cloud, but I do hate the cloud done wrong. I have seen way too many organizations encounter too many bad things in the cloud, and pretty much every time it's because they didn't take the time to design their cloud environment upfront properly for a number of reasons, right? Maybe they were out of capacity, needed to jump to the cloud, or someone decided, this is the big goal of the year, we're going to go to the cloud. It's really important to take some time upfront to set the stage and understand why you're doing things. Now, if you're in the cloud and you had to get there really fast, the great thing is the cloud is super flexible, so it's easy to go back and kind of design everything correctly a little bit after the fact. Now, the one thing to understand about the cloud is it is a shared responsibility model, right? A shared responsibility model, not a no responsibility model. We are responsible for things like our data and our applications in the cloud, but we're not responsible for things like data center and hardware and equipment and dealing with power and cooling or any of that stuff. I spent a lot of time in data centers in my career, and I agree that stuff can be problematic. And if we want to get rid of something in our entire IT environments, that should be it. It doesn't necessarily add value to our business. A lot of times it can kind of make things take a lot longer, which is one of the reasons the cloud has become so popular, right? So we need to focus on our applications and our data, which are the important part of everything at the end of the day. Now, by nature, the cloud is simply more accessible. I can take out a credit card, or sometimes I don't even need one, right? And just start spinning up cloud resources. I mean, think about it. If I'm deploying a new cloud environment, I'm sitting somewhere on a computer or device, anywhere in the world, accessing the cloud provider to do my work. Now, this means that just about anybody could access my cloud environment under the right set of circumstances, which is why there are many threat actors out there that are very focused on the cloud and attacking cloud environments. The barrier to entry is slightly lower in the cloud than it would be on the on-prem data center, even though a lot of the ways they would get into our data center, they would get into our cloud as well. Now, I definitely don't want to scare you too much and paint too bleak of a picture here. So let's talk about some of the ways that the cloud just makes things more secure by nature, because believe it or not, it does. So let's talk about hardware vulnerabilities, right? They have been on the rise in the last couple of years, even like the last 6 months or so. We are out of that game. We are no longer worrying about hardware vulnerabilities because that's something the cloud provider is responsible for. And believe me, they take those responsibilities very, very seriously. And their teams that they have dedicated to making sure all that is working correctly and they're attacking their vulnerabilities correctly are bigger than anything we could ever have in our environment, right? So that's one way that the cloud is actually a lot more powerful and a lot more secure than if we were running everything on-prem stuff, right? That means that we can focus on the software and application level and eliminating those vulnerabilities and making sure that we have a secure configuration everywhere above the hardware level, right? So that cloud actually gives us a lot of time back to work on things and make our environments more secure. So what are things that we should keep in mind during this process? And what are the things we should kind of go after first? So I want to introduce 4 concepts that can really help us drive our cloud security strategies. 1, cloud security architectures. 2, identity and access management. 3, encryption techniques. And I always smile when I talk about encryption. And 4, continuous monitoring strategies. Now, none of this stuff probably seems earth-shattering, especially if you've had a great cloud security posture in the past. However, if you're just beginning to get into hybrid cloud or multi-cloud, there's some complexity that comes into play. Do clouds natively have tools to address everything I just talked about? Absolutely. But when we start getting into, okay, I'm dealing with on-prem and the cloud, or I'm dealing with multiple clouds, management overhead can quickly grow. So there's absolutely something to be said about the ability to manage your complete cloud environment, hybrid and multi-cloud, with the same set of tooling, right? That's really something important for us to keep in our minds as we go forward, is how do we reduce operational complexity? Now let's start with cloud security architecture. First, let me say that embracing the cloud is a great time to examine how you've been securing things in the past, right? You essentially have a clean slate. And one of the things I always like to talk about is if you make a mistake in the cloud, it's actually pretty easy to go back and re-architect and secure later, because I'm not waiting for things like racking and stacking or having to move stuff around or any of that stuff I could be doing in my traditional data center. One of the most popular security architectures right now is something called zero trust, right? This is something that everybody is talking about all over the place. And what does it mean? It just means that no one is trusted by default, and everyone and everything requires verification before you access a resource. Simply put, we're not going to trust someone or something just because it's already on our network. And this is great. And I think this is because we've seen a lot of phishing attacks, right? Someone gets credentials, they get in, and then they can just jump around the whole environment and wreak havoc, right? With zero trust, that's not going to happen, because there's going to be different types of authentication and authorization at different points that ideally will be stopping this attacker, because they will not be able to be verified moving throughout the cloud. So this ties into our next thing to consider, which is identity and access management. We need to make sure that everyone trying to access a resource in our cloud is who they say they are, and that they have only access to what they should. This goes back to something called the principle of least privilege, and becomes even more important as our cloud architecture grows more complex, right? We don't want people to have extra rights, because They might make an error. They might do something. And again, if their account is compromised somewhere along the way, we don't want them to be the point of kind of concern, right? If I am, let's just say I'm on the finance team, I shouldn't have access to the backups, right? There's no way that I should have access to the backup storage. But if someone messes that up around at some point and my account is compromised, that could be kind of a potential disaster. Now, encryption also plays a huge part in our cloud architecture, especially when we're sending data over the internet, right? And there's two types of encryption we really want to be thinking about, data at rest encryption and data in transit encryption. And think about it this way, especially for data at rest. If you don't encrypt your data, someone else is going to do it for you, right? We have heard about ransomware, which I haven't actually said before now, believe it or not. We've heard about ransomware and people having all their data encrypted. And unless you've set up everything and secured it properly up front, this can be very, very difficult to recover from. Even if we have the best security architecture in the world and the best people operating our environments, let's face it, there are new threats emerging each and every day. One of the best defense mechanisms we can have in our environment is a continuous monitoring system. Again, this is really important when we start talking about more complex environments like hybrid and multi-cloud, right? We need to know what's going on in an environment, what's changing, who's accessing what, and we need to know when the baseline changes, when someone or something is doing something that doesn't normally happen. And then we can alert our security staff and hopefully thwart an attack before it gets too far within our environment. Now, these are 4 different actionable things to think about, and we can really start diving deeper in each of these to take steps to really secure our cloud environment today. We are about to hear from a number of technology partners that can help you with each step in this journey, no matter what your environment looks like today or what it's going to look like tomorrow. Get ready for a great day full of everything you need to protect and secure your cloud environment. Back to you, Actual Tech Media team.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was awesome. I love how you said you were kind of a cloud skeptic, because I do think it's great to challenge and think critically about what are we putting into our organizations, how are we setting it up, and not just say, hey, it's hot, it's the future, it's the trend, I'm going to do it. And I think this is a great day to kind of explore a holistic approach of, yeah, how do we do this, whether we're full in on cloud or if we are adapting a current on-prem or hybrid situation. So thank you. So excited to hear from all of our presenters today. It's going to be a great day to get our head in the clouds. I like using a little pun here. If you haven't noticed already, there is a poll up. Basically, this poll is just asking, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? Is this something you're looking to do right away in the first kind of 6 months here? Is this a year-long project? Is this a couple years? Or are you just not sure? You're here to learn, you're here to figure out what some options are and then make some decisions going forward from there. Now, I do want to just remind you, we're going to have a few polls today. The more interactive you are, the better. We also have the handouts and questions tab. So if you haven't found that yet, feel free to pop into the questions tab, say a hello, and I definitely encourage you to ask some great questions of our team that I'm about to introduce to you here, because we do not only have the best question gift card going out each session, but truly you're going to get the information you want to hear and get a more lively and engaged Q&A, which we're going to have with each presenting team today. So without further ado, I'm going to move on from the poll, and I'm excited to introduce our first team here from CyberArk. We have both Josh Kirkwood, who is the Senior Product Marketing Manager, and Anat Eitan Davidi, Manager of Product Management. And the two of them are going to be presenting, and then I'm going to join you two for Q&A. So Anat, Josh, are you ready to rock?
Yes, very much so.
Perfect. Well, I'll let you take it away, and then I'll join you for the Q&A on the other side.
Thank you
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time in advance listening to us. We're going to be walking you through a topic today. Just move over to the slide. Topic's one that I hold very close to my heart. It's the idea of securing developers beyond the sort of standing access they already have and how to do well. And Nat, do you want to quickly introduce yourself before we jump in?
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. Nice to meet you all. My name is Anat. I'm a manager in our product management division leading our cloud security solutions.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right, Anat, I'm going to move over to this and take it away.
Perfect, thank you. So as Josh mentioned, in the session today, we will talk how to secure the developer's access. So let's look at what type of an access a developer needs when they get a task to develop a new feature or a new application. Now, most of the modern applications are developed over the public cloud. It can be AWS, GCP, or Azure, of course. Developing a new application, for example, on AWS, usually requires developing AWS Lambda functions, using a database, a Kubernetes, and so on. The concept with developers is that I develop it, I own it. The developers are responsible to take their features, their application from development through testing, pre-prod, and all the way till it is deployed on production and used by the customer. Josh, do you want to share with us a real-life example of a such application?
Oh, yes. So look, this is taken from our user research. This is effectively a synthetic version of what we see many people doing as they interact with the cloud. Throughout their normal daily work, they'll find themselves accessing a given account, choosing service on it, and then interacting with the service, going off and doing their job. In the very first introduction, we saw them actually have access to 3 accounts, prod, dev, test. And in this, even though they're currently sitting in production, they're still exploring a bunch of resources, capabilities, and put themselves in a situation where they can then view metrics and effectively understand what's going on in the system. You're seeing now the shift that happens in many different environments. They've checked the service is working, and they've moved into checking the databases that are underpinning it. I'd expect my Lambda functions to be interacting with something like a database. So again, this is something very normal. I'm actually going to connect, in this example, to live test data. It's very interesting. And can you sort of share with us the results of the analysis of what went on in here and the challenges that we may see that came up here?
Yes, thank you. So what we saw actually a developer connecting into their environment, running on AWS, using the different applications, databases, and so on. So as Joshua mentioned, we actually saw that we have an access to multiple environments, the development, the staging, the production. That developer had an admin level permissions to everything and had a standing access, both to the cloud console and to the database. Now let's look at what are the security concerns from such an environment. So first of all, we have the risk of a lateral movement. If a bad actor is compromising data-specific identity, they can easily move within the environment from development, staging, all the way to production. We also see that with the extensive permissions that are given, they're not always necessarily. If you just have the task of monitoring your function, you don't need an admin level permissions for this specific task. And we need always to remember, it's not always that we need to protect against bad actors. We also have the cases of an oopsie. A developer, instead of connecting into the development environment, connected accidentally into the production environment, deleted some kind of a S3 bucket, an AWS stack, or something like that, creating a production outage and loss of data. This is actually a story that is based on a true case that happened to one of our customers. So that's the reason that we need to look on how to secure the environment. And actually in a single application, we have different environments as we saw in the example earlier. We have the elastic workloads that are running on the cloud, like VMs and databases. These workloads are taking the advantage of the cloud flexibility, the elastic compute, which auto-scale based on the demand. In addition, we have the services running in the cloud, native services that are provided by the cloud service providers. Each of the 3 major cloud service providers today have hundreds of services, and they provide a very granular controls and permissions. That makes the permissions model very complex and hard to manage. And as we saw in the cloud, especially in the cloud services, every user is actually also an administrator of the environment. So, Josh, what are the security concerns that you see with this?
Oh, that's a question. And I think we maybe jumped in quite quickly to talking about the developer without explaining to you why this is super important. I'm going to make a statement. I'm going to tell you that developers are one of the most valuable assets for modern digital enterprise. The reason I say this is that if you look at how any enterprise is interacting with the world, there is a very good chance it's going to be done in software. That software is either optimizing how the enterprise works, the experience the customers have as they do with it. My own bank, for example, now, this traditional UK-based bank with banks on the high street, everything's done over the app. Even if you go in branch, the default behavior of the staff there is to teach you how to do it in the application. When interviewed, the CEO of that bank said that 1/3 of their employees are now in tech rather than in traditional banking roles. This is all because developers are worth their weight in gold. And the reality that we all have to face is that attackers absolutely know this. In the example I'm going to give, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's any failings in the sort of process that could have been in place in this organization. I am going to say that they maybe didn't have the correct tools or technologies to address this challenge. When we look at any digital native business or any sort of cloud-centric business that's delivering software, you'll find that the developers end up obtaining massive amounts of access, as you've seen with the NATS example. An attacker will go off and target people that they believe to have access. Often they may find themselves with access to, a more junior role, but still that can be used to identify the people they want to target. In this example, the actual attackers moved on to from initial recon to targeting a senior developer. In most organizations, these roles would be titled something like site reliability engineer, platform engineer. But these guys are the firefighters in the development world. They're there to put out big disasters when it comes to running applications. And in this case, they got exactly what they needed to do. But as soon as they've got access to credentials or the access that is given to this kind of person, they can go off and do their thing. It becomes a longer attack chain. But what we have to focus on is how we can mitigate the risks involved here. And look, this brings me to talking about some of the conceptual ideas you can use for managing this. The very first thing I'll say, and this is something I see a lot when I spend time with people building out these controls and programs, is do nothing. Developers are really sensitive, or people that write code, not click, engineers, however you want to call them, are very sensitive to how they work. Putting security controls in place can sometimes be an incredibly challenging political conversation, and something that you may often end up seeing people prioritize other programs rather than engaging with. The traditional answer, and something that we would have maybe said 5 years ago, would be that of vaulting standing access, identifying the accounts that developers, the engineers are using, and then putting controls in place to keep them in a vault subject to certain security rules that maybe limit access to them, and then handing them over through session isolation. But those accounts still exist in target environments. It would frustrate the desire to access them natively or outside of, say, secured networks, and it would just be a risk mitigation. And what else could we do?
So I truly believe that the current method of vaulting and isolation, it's not the right method for developers, not aligned with the way the developers want to work. So in order to meet the expectation of developers around single sign-on, ease of use, native access, we need to look for other privilege controls, such as just-in-time controls. In just-in-time access, the access is provisioned and granted just in time to the required target. We reduce the risk of a compromised access, but not necessarily we are reducing the risk of the access itself. And that's the reason that we need to look for another concept. and that concept is actually zero standing privileges. In zero standing privileges, we are actually taking control, a full control of the entitlements that an identity has, and we are removing all the entitlements until they are actually requested and needed. With zero standing privileges, we actually reduce both the risk of a compromised access and also the impact of that access, as the granted access is always just enough access and least privileged permissions. So let's see if we implement such a control, how it will look like from the end user perspective, from the developer point of view. Thank you. So our users, they connect to AWS, but with zero standing privileges, they have no access at all. They need to connect into our controls and get the visibility of which permissions they can actually use, and only the required permissions for the designed account are provisioned just in time. When the access is granted, the user can continue and work natively, either in the Cloud Console, via the web browser, or from a CLI, of course, navigating through the different services in the cloud, again, according to the permissions that were granted in that session. Obviously, if in that application we have a database that we want to connect natively as well, using a database client, we can connect to this database, again, with a federated identity, single sign-on, and also zero standing privileges, and to continue and work the same as we are working today with our database. So that actually leads me into what are the controls that we have in place for zero standing privileges. And we call them TEAT. So T stands for time, the duration of the specific session. Every session is limited in the time, and at the end of the session, the permissions are revoked from the cloud environment, and we are back to zero standing privileges in the cloud. Second are the entitlements, the E. So the entitlements are granted based on least privilege, only enough permissions that are required for that specific session, and never the sum of all permissions that the user might have and might be able to use. And the third one is the A, approval. We have a scale. There are specific access that we want to approve the access automatically without an additional approval in place, but there are specific types of access that we want to have a manual approval before getting the permissions and accessing the cloud environment. So we have those two controls consolidated under the TEAT concept. Let's look a little bit more about why it is important to secure the access to the cloud services. So the cloud services is actually the front door to the cloud environment. And using the Cloud Console, as you know, you can access and control every aspect of your application, including your customers' data and your own production environment. In our case, we are pursuing the method of zero standing privileges in order to reduce the chance of any lateral movement in the cloud environment. And the access is done based on the just-in-time method and least privilege. It means when the end user wants to connect to the cloud, they are getting only the permissions they need for the specific session, and not all of the available permissions in the environment. This way, again, we are reducing the potential of the impact in case of a compromised identity. But as we said, in the cloud and in cloud application, we don't only have the cloud services, but we also have the cloud workloads. So every application has a database, at least one. In a lift and shift application, we are also relying on VMs running on the cloud. That's the reason that when we are looking at reducing the risk in the cloud, we should take into consideration both the cloud native services and the workloads running on the cloud. Same here, we are following the principle of zero standing privileges both for VMs and for databases. Now, since the cloud workloads are elastic, the access is defined based on attributes. This way, we have a dynamic policy, and we do not need to update the policy whenever a new instance is created or deleted. Now, Josh, I think developers has an additional access method into the cloud.
Yes, absolutely. So look, I don't want to leave any avenue unsecured. And no attacker is going to say, well, I understand your security program is only focused on how your staff are interacting directly with the cloud. They're going to use whatever method they can find. And the reality here is that we have to secure them all. In this case, it becomes a way of securing both human and machine access. So what we do here is we keep in mind that there will be very many different ways into the cloud. And our focus moves on to dealing with secrets management at the same time. The story I'm going to tell you, and this is part of a much larger story that we'd love to tell you at great length if you have any interest past this. But we can do secrets management not by asking your developers or the individuals challenged with software development to change how they work. Instead, we are going to manage the vaults they already use. So if you talk to developers focused on AWS, they'll say they use Secrets Manager. If you talk Azure, you'll hear Azure Key Vault come up. For us, we want to put a level of management on there. We want to have the ability to do discovery. We want to rotate credentials as and when required, which just takes a bunch of compliance pain off your table, and do it in a way that does not change developers' experience. So this becomes part of a larger story. So we're not just talking about securing how people log into a cloud environment. You've heard from Annette that we can cover the cloud console and services behind it, the cloud workloads, and of course the secrets management piece. So that brings me on to my final slide with content, where I have the pleasure of saying that what CyberArk offers in this space is a single solution to control everything from an access and identity security perspective into your cloud estate with integrated audit capabilities. This will help you address a range of audit challenges. Annette?
Yeah, exactly. And as we saw, the zero standing privileges with the TEA concept, we can secure both the access to the cloud services and the cloud workloads. We cannot neglect one of them and reduce the risk in case of a compromised identity. The zero standing approach also allows us to be aligned with the way the developers are working today and to allow them to continue and work natively without the need to install any agent in their environment.
And this drives an increase in efficiency. Right, I can make lots of big claims here. I'm not going to sit and say this is going to make everyone faster at doing their jobs. But what it's going to do is it's going to put us in a much better place for automating the onboarding of new projects, programs, elements where we can discover the credentials, and accelerating the people challenged with out-of-hours access during a disaster into the workloads they need access to. This last point, the idea that we can smooth approvals, has changed numerous organizations' workflows and improved so many things that I'm really pleased to talk about it. That brings me to my favorite slide in any of this, which is that of questions. So have a chat. Let's see what we're doing for questions.
All right. Excellent presentation, you two. We definitely have quite a number of questions that have come in, so I'm going to do my best to pose any and all of them to you as we can within the time we've got. I am going to just throw up a poll quickly. So anyone out there in the audience, if you are looking for some additional information about the CyberArk solution, just plunk in what you're looking for. Do you want a data sheet? Do you want pricing details? Do you want a personal demo? What is it you're looking for? This is your wish list, your easy button. And after today's MegaCast, the CyberArk team will send the information right to you and follow up in the adequate way. So I'll leave that up there while we do some Q&A. And with that, Nat, Josh, are you ready to just dive into it here?
Let's do
Yes,
this.
of course.
Okay, we had quite a number of questions about the zero standing privileges, so I'm going to see if I can combine them a little bit, or maybe we'll just kind of go back to back and flesh out the topic. But first is, how are you able to accurately determine the exact level of permissions to grant for zero standing privileges?
That is a very, very, very good start for questions. It requires us to have an understanding of effectively what the permissions mean. We have a cloud discovery service. We have the ability to understand the permissions that are already aligned to a given user. This allows us to then make calls as to what the sort of impact of these permissions look like. But also some of this will come from you. In the end, there'll always be an organizational appetite to design and control roles. What we want to do is make sure that you have a system that allows you to control who has access to those roles with the right approvals for the right time, in the right way, so that even if you do have a role that is literally full admin, you can gate it and make it available to people that are coming in make it available at the right time to the right person, rather than just giving it to everyone all at the same time. And have I left anything off there?
No, I think that you made the exact point. And also on top of that, you can take the decision of what are the additional controls that you want to put in place. For example, if you have these admin level permissions to production environment, you might want someone to approve this access. You want to put like an automatic approval mechanism if this is the on-call engineer. So you have a lot of ways to determine what are the controls that you have in place, based on the analysis of are those permissions are highly privileged or not.
Excellent. Yeah, there were a couple kind of follow-up questions about the trade-off between like security and the inconvenience, and then a little bit about how a user either is granted access or if they need to request it. So I think you covered most of that, but is there anything you want to add about kind of making it seamless, or what features might allow kind of that equation to tip one way or other in terms of secure yet convenient?
Yes, so I think that we need to actually separate between a daily access of a developer that is usually to a development environment, staging environment, versus an access to production environment, and to balance the controls that we have. Because an access, and again, every access to the cloud is a privileged access, even a read-only access, because from a read-only access, you can understand who has the admin level permissions. So keep that in mind. But when accessing a low environment with non-privileged permissions, you can say, okay, we are still following the zero standard privileges in place, but we are allowing the user to connect automatically without an approval in place. In a production environment, maybe you don't want even to have that eligibility, that option in place, but you do need to have the proper tools for that user to request the access that they need when they need it and to get the proper approval. For example, if I'm the on-call engineer, I need an urgent access. Again, the same example. I need an urgent access to production environment. I should only get that access if I have a valid ticket in place, or if I am indeed the on-call engineer in one of the on-call system, and then that access can be approved for me automatically. But if I am now a developer that needs access to a production environment in order to investigate a case that it's not urgent, I can wait for an approval. Okay, so we have different controls, and you can balance between them in order from one way to keep the high security, but on the other hand, not to slow down the developers per their task that they have currently.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you for fleshing that out. And I think that definitely covers kind of most of the queries around that that I saw popping up in the Q&A. We might have time just for one more question here. And this is about, does CyberArk support hybrid infrastructure? We're talking about cloud today, but we still want to see how that bridge can happen.
Very aware of time and very appreciative of the time you've given us. Yes, absolutely. We came here with a cloud story, but I can tell you a story from mainframe to microservices. We've got you covered on hybrid infrastructure, trust me.
Awesome. And then any final words, any call to action that if people are curious, if they want to learn a little bit more, where should they go? What should they do? Or something you want to leave the audience with?
So we've got a bunch of different links provided as part of the webcast. Please have a look. We provide a bunch of different information on our website, in our blog. We talk about lots of different security research topics. And all I'll say is that please don't forget to focus on cloud access when it comes to cloud security.
Exactly. And just on top of that, remember, every access to the cloud is a privileged access. Your entire estate is running on the cloud. Don't neglect that, please.
Don't neglect the cloud and keep it in mind as you go forward and develop. Beautiful. Well, Josh and Nat, thank you for being here today. I am going to let you go, but it's so great to have you on and can't wait to have you back again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Take care. Now, if you are looking to take some next steps, I know many of you have answered the poll already, but I'm going to take that down shortly. You may also want to check out the handouts tab, which is where you'll see from all of our presenters today some unique links or resources. And with CyberArk, you're actually got a link there where you can request a demo and take the first steps with checking out the CyberArk solution for yourself. So definitely click on that if you're curious and give it a go. And with that, I'm going to keep things moving along. We do have our first bit of prizes to give away. So again, today we have 4 $300 Amazon gift cards, and we also have a 5 PlayStation 5s. So quick reminder, you do need to be present at the webinar here to win. And with that, the first $300 gift card is going out to Andrew Keefe from New Jersey. Congratulations. And the first PlayStation 5 is going out to Julie Barnes from Kansas. Congratulations to both of you. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming those prizes after the webinar. And don't forget, there are still plenty of chances to win. So keep your ears perked up for coming prizes as the different presentations go through today on the MegaCast. Now with that, let's keep things zipping along here today. Our next team who's going to be presenting are our friends at Rubrik. If you've been around a few actual tech webinars, you have probably seen Rubrik, and it's great to have some new blood, new presenters from the Rubrik team here today. So Philip, thank you for coming on. Philip Verlooy is the field CTO of EMEA over at Rubrik, and he's going to be filling us in on protecting and securing cloud environments. So the floor is yours.
Also on behalf of Rubrik, thank you for attending this Actual Tech Media event and spending some time with us going over protecting and securing your cloud environments. I'm Philip Verlooy, Field CTO here at Rubrik X. At Rubrik, our mission is to secure the world's data, and an ever-increasing part of that world is public cloud environments. So that's what I want to focus the majority of the session on today. Before we talk about cloud though, let's start with this concept of cyber resilience. Cyber resilience is sort of a different mindset from focusing purely on prevention of cyber attacks to assuming the worst will happen at some point and incorporating that idea into your risk and recovery planning. Our assumption here is that cyber attacks are inevitable. People at some point will still click on the wrong things they will get through email or just find on the open web. All software, of course, has bugs, and some of these bugs are security vulnerabilities that can lead to incidents and breaches. Just think about how many times you have to update your iOS and Android apps on your phone, for example. And all software systems, they tend to break, and they tend to break all of the time, even though it's largely invisible for us as end users. A lot of these things tend to go awry and are also related to security gaps in those systems. So the question used to be not if, but when you were going to be breached or have a cyber incident in your organization. Today, the realization is really getting to not when are you going to get breached, but how many times will you potentially be a victim of this. So this assume breach mindset will potentially also remove some mental roadblocks and allow you to focus on bouncing back successfully and bouncing back better, building up your, let's say, cybersecurity and cyber resiliency capabilities to safeguard your organization and to continue to run your business on a day-to-day basis. Now, these changing environments, the way that we build our architectures, think about going from largely on-prem to adopting hybrid cloud to now multi-cloud and bringing in a lot of SaaS applications, is also leading to changing behaviors from a malicious actor perspective. These stats, they come from the latest IBM X-Force Threat Intelligence Index for 2024, where they noticed a 71% year-on-year increase in cyber attacks using stolen or compromised credentials. So this is fast becoming the biggest attack factor, especially when it comes to cloud environments, is these malicious actors. They're not sort of hacking into your system, they're not breaking in, they're effectively logging in using valid credentials, which becomes very difficult for existing security tools to evaluate at that point, and that's why they're sort of largely successful. About 32% of cyber incidents today involve some sort of data theft or data leakage event as well. So if you combine that with regulatory pressure around reporting towards regulators and so on what type of data was impacted, what type of potentially personal information you lost from your customers, you can see that this is increasing the pressure quite a bit on a lot of organizations. And then 84% of critical infrastructure incidents took place where the initial access factor could have been mitigated by implementing things like least privilege control on identities, for example. Again, if we look at sort of the technical part of least resistance for these malicious actors or these threat actors, it's quite clear that instead of going after these perimeter controls or maybe even taking a more esoteric part and going after your IoT devices, it's easier for them to either use some sort of phishing campaign. They would still need to some extent compromise the device of that user that clicks on that phishing link, whereas the easiest part right now would be to use credentials. The way that they get those credentials can be fairly easy. Either you find credentials, posted on things like, a GitHub repository or a paste bin or something like that, especially when it comes to things like API keys and so on. But there's, of course, people who offer you those valid credentials on, avenues like Telegram and others. One example would be Redline Stealer, very successful malware, easily available, able to not only harvest things like saved credentials, but also active cookies, making it fairly straightforward for these malicious actors to not only get in, but to maybe even subvert things like multi-factor authentication and so on. So once they have this valid account, this compromised account, they will start to laterally move around in your environment, get to a more privileged account with more permissions, and that's typically how they will get to your data. They will either steal your data or they will encrypt your data, and in a lot of the cases, if not the majority of the cases today, we see it's actually even a combination of both. So they have two shots at getting you to pay the ransom and release the data back to you. Now, if you think about data that's been encrypted in the cloud or even on-prem, once you have a decryption key, or maybe you have a nice immutable backup solution, you can get your data back quite easily. But data that has been stolen, that tends to be gone forever, right? So if the genie is out of the bottle, you can't get it back in. And you have to trust that malicious actor that if you pay the ransom, they will actually not leak your data on the dark web. And we've seen enough evidence now that these people are very scrupulous, and some of them will just leak your data in any case. So the goal is to figure out a way to minimize the potential impact of a data exfiltration while still assuming that it can happen. So that's nicely fitting into our sort of cyber resilience assume breach mindset, let's say. Now, if you think about data growth, so where is the majority of the new data being created? That's, of course, in the cloud and in SaaS applications. So these figures are from our previous Rubrik Zero Labs report, which you can freely get from the Rubrik website as well. But what we saw there is that 20% of the new data is created on premises, but that's far outpaced by the cloud and SaaS. So 73% of new data is created in the public cloud and 145% in SaaS applications. The way to think about that is, I think, if you look at where are people experimenting, where is innovation happening, that's typically in the cloud or from a SaaS sort of perspective. So those data locations, they become the most interesting attack surface for malicious actors. They tend to dig where there's the most chance to hit gold, and the most chance to hit gold these days is in the cloud and in SaaS, as it turns out. Moving to the cloud also brings with it some security blind spots, especially if you think about using existing security tools and sort of lifting and shifting them into the cloud together with your workloads. There's certain things those tools aren't sort of prepared for. So our latest Rubrik Zero Labs pointed out that 70% of all data in a typical cloud instance is actually object storage. So that's vastly different from on-prem environments where it will be mostly file and block based storage. But of that data, more than 25% of all object stores, they do contain data covered by regulatory or legal requirements. So, PII information or HIPAA type information, PCI information from a financial perspective, and so on. And that type of data is much more valuable to an attacker because if, they know that if they have that type of information and they threaten to leak it, you're much more likely to pay a ransom because it's so much more impactful for you as an organization as well. And then looking at public cloud and SaaS, they are the leading attack surfaces today. Again, that's where that type of data can be exfiltrated. So that's going to be the first target for these malicious actors. And similarly to how it has always been in security, but especially true for multi-cloud now, you cannot secure what you cannot see. So getting visibility on those data assets would be step one. So all of that leads to some cloudy prospects, I would say. The weather is not super clear in the cloud, so there's more and more criminals, more and more malicious users. Again, they're targeting where sort of the biggest chance of success lies. We've seen a lot of examples in the public now around ransomware and ransomware payments and the monetary impact not only the cleanup operation has, but also things like impact on your organization at large and how you deal with that. Cloud environments, of course, are creating a larger and larger attack surface. There's more exposure, so you have more things to defend now, especially if you go multi-cloud and SaaS. All of these things have their own unique entry paths and services that you now have to understand and protect. And maybe your IT staff isn't prepared for that, but also maybe your existing tooling isn't really prepared for that either. Mentioned before as well, but there's more and more regulatory pressure, especially things like DORA, for example, in finance. And then if you happen to be based in Europe, we are now dealing with the NIS2 regulation, where not only these fines are getting quite substantial, but they also include, let's say, holding company leadership and holding board members to certain cybersecurity standards, and if they sort of can't adhere to those standards, they will be held liable in some of these cases potentially. Then, if you think about adopting cloud, adopting multi-cloud, there's always the chance of performing some misconfiguration leading to, for example, publicly exposed cloud storage and cloud buckets and so on. But even the cloud provider itself isn't free of those things, right? There was a recent example where Google Cloud wiped out an entire customer environment, including their HA setup and including their Google-based backup, so they had to rely on a third-party backup vendor to get their data back. These things, they happen sometimes, so we sort of have to prepare for that. In terms of insiders, there's always going to be people who leave your organization. There's always going to be disgruntled employees to some extent, and they might take some of that sensitive information with them. There's even malicious actors now targeting some of these insiders to give them an easy path to the inside and sort of help them get to their ultimate goal, which is to get to your data. And then finally, I would say there's more and more nation states or more and more APTs active as well. An interesting one I saw from a couple of weeks ago was this joint statement from the NSA and the Five Eyes, saying that Russian cyber spies are also adapting their techniques from going from on-prem targets to more and more cloud-hosted environments. Again, that's where the chances of success are highest, unfortunately. So how do we address this? If you think about this very high-level, let's say, logical attack path or kill chain, the idea is we can focus on preventing a breach from happening, but we also need to take into account that it will still happen, like incidents will still happen. So the ultimate goal is how do we make sure that an incident, i.e. maybe somebody gets credentials, is able to log into your environment, doesn't turn into a breach. And if it does turn into a breach, how do we minimize the impact of that breach? So the way that we look at it from a Rubrik perspective is we work on, first of all, production data at rest, meaning the data does not have to be managed through Rubrik. It's just sitting in your public clouds. It's sitting in your SaaS environments. And that is where we will employ our data security posture management technologies. So we look at things like data hygiene, minimizing the amount of data that you have, especially when it comes to sensitive data. So think about having copies of data spread around your environment, typically for dev test purposes. Some of those data assets contain sensitive information, so they're just as valuable to a malicious user as non-copies of data as actual production data. So if that data isn't used actively, maybe you haven't touched it for a long period of time, why is it still there? So why are you paying the cloud provider to store it? And why are you sort of exposing that sensitive data to a potential breach? So finding that access data, that road data, let's say, and getting rid of it, either by actually deleting it or at least removing access to it, can go a long way in making sure the incidents don't turn into breaches. Then we have to implement the least privilege access principle. So the idea is, do we understand how identities are linked to data exposure on the back end? And can we then implement right sizing for those identities? Instead of overexposing and just giving full access permissions on anything, can we make sure that we only provide credentials with the access that they need to actually perform their day-to-day operations? And if they need more access at a certain point in time, we provide just-in-time sort of access and extend those credentials. So getting visibility on what that looks like will help you greatly in right-sizing these permissions and these privileges. Then the third thing that we look at is assessing data posture. So each and every cloud has different security capabilities. You can, turn on encryption, you can turn on logging for an S3 bucket in AWS, for cloud storage in GCP, and so on. But validating that you've actually implemented this across the board becomes troublesome. So the idea here is that we'll allow you to build policies that determine the baseline of security that you expect from your multi-cloud. And then Rubrik DSPM will go out and validate that that posture is still set, and help you tweak that in if needed. Then understanding the blast radius of accounts. So if people get access to a higher privileged account, what data would they be able to target, for example, and making sure we minimize that. And then finally, detecting anomalous behavior. So the whole idea of understanding how data is being used in your environment, and then seeing these outliers, anomalous activity in your environment, somebody downloading sensitive data to their laptop for the first time ever, somebody accessing, sensitive information from a strange location around the world where you have no branch offices, for example, things like that we can monitor for and then help you implement the correct controls. So again, all of that happens before you have a copy of the data that's associated with Rubrik. So that's purely working on data at rest. And then, of course, we still have this concept of, well, what if the worst happens? What if my data gets destroyed or encrypted and I need to get back into production as quickly as possible? That's where our backup data stored in an immutable fashion, i.e. the Rubrik Security Cloud capabilities through Rubrik Cloud Native Protection come in. So we'll help you pinpoint the latest and greatest, let's say, safe copy of the data that wasn't impacted by any malware, help you restore it as quickly as possible, understand the impact in your environment. And if you do not want to sort of do this on your own, we do have the Rubrik ransomware recovery team to help you with that. Again, our assumption here is that stress might be high when you're going through an active ransomware recovery scenario. And if you can rely on this great bunch of people who have done it multiple times for customers all around the world and have sort of a standard process, they will guide you through that. That will help a lot. Now, all of these solutions aren't point products that you have to individually implement. They're actually integrated nicely into what we call the Rubrik Security Cloud. So depending on your specific use case, if it's cloud data protection or if it's more data security posture management, they all come together in the Rubrik Security Cloud and can be consumed as a SaaS product from our Security Cloud services. It all starts, I would say, with this difference in philosophy when we think about how do we implement this and how do we have our customers consume this. So there's a difference in philosophy in that we want to make this extremely simple. The way that you operate is very centralized. You work on the basis of what we call an SLA domain or an SLA policy, and you can apply that policy across the multi-cloud and across SaaS and even on-prem environments. Whereas if you look at individual cloud providers, they typically do not think in this solution manner. They really offer you building blocks to build something yourself. And even if you think about a single cloud provider, that single backup solution, for example, that they will offer you is not valid across their entire estate either. So there's a lot of, let's say, things that you sort of have to manually connect together and manually figure out what is the best way forward here. So at a high level, why is this so difficult from a cloud perspective to secure and recover data? So first thing, of course, is lack of visibility and control of your growing data environment, which is a direct result of adopting more and more cloud services, of course. So you have, PaaS, SaaS services. Some of these things have sensitive data in them. Some of that data is important from a regulatory requirement. You have your internal teams, let's say, with their internal tools. Some of them aren't really fit for purpose when it comes to cloud. But all of them have different expectations and different requirements when it comes to these environments as well. So then it becomes really difficult to uniformly understand if something happens in your environment, let's say a ransomware attack, can we even recover from a ransomware across all of these environments? And can we actually prove that out? Like, how do we make sure that this is effective when that time inevitably happens in our environment? So even with cloud native backup tools, it's going to be challenging to get a baseline copy of a backup across all of your services. It's operationally quite complex, and especially when it comes to things like visibility, compliance, reporting, that's going to be really hard to implement cross-cloud. Then a backup is only as good as the recovery capabilities that it provides, essentially. So if you think about recovery being quite manual in the public cloud, not super performant, missing things like single file recovery and so on, that becomes a challenge. And then finally, the cost or the lack of cost optimization, I should say, in the public cloud, because there's a lack of storage steering, there's a lack of compression and deduplication, there's multiple clouds needing multiple tools. These all play into a higher cost and a higher TCO at the end of the day. If you then multiply this with multiple accounts across multiple clouds, that problem becomes sort of worse and worse and worse, especially then if you also need to think about a hybrid environment and SaaS solutions at the same time. So again, we unify all of this. We provide these capabilities across multiple clouds, but also across multiple stakeholders in the environment. So what that looks like then is we give you the capability to gain data visibility and control across those cloud environments. So understand the data that you have in the environment, then understand if it's protected in the right way, all from the same SaaS platform. We'll drive down the exposure, so we'll reduce the data theft potential in your environment. Then we'll allow you to confidently back up and restore all of the data across multi-cloud and SaaS, and all done again with a lower TCO potentially in mind. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for attending our session. If there's any questions, happy to take any email or reach out to me on x.com. I'm Philip V there, but happy to chat to you guys a bit more about our cyber resiliency capabilities. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Philip. As mentioned, feel free to reach out to Philip by email or over one of the websites there. We aren't going to have Philip staying on for a live Q&A. We just don't have the time today. But any of you that sent in some questions to Rubrik, do not fret. The Rubrik team will definitely be reaching out after the MegaCast today and make sure any of your questions are answered. And speaking of wanting a little bit of a follow-up, the poll is up here for Rubrik as well, asking what additional information you would like about the Rubrik solution. So again, if your interest is piqued, you think Rubrik might be the right fit for you, and you want to know a little bit more, feel free to answer that poll and just let them know what you are seeking. Data sheets, demos, pricing details, case studies, they can hand that over to you after today's webinar. And do not forget, not only do we have the ability to hand out that information after the webinar, but you can also get started right away by clicking into the Handouts tab and grab some different resources from each of our vendors here today. And so from Rubrik, they've got an ebook. The ebook there is Enterprise Data Mobility in the Cloud Era. If you want to get a copy of that ebook, just plunk in your email and download it, and it will be yours to keep and review after today's event. So definitely a cool resource and definitely worth checking out. And with that, I actually have a couple more prizes to give away. I know at least one of you out there has been chanting on that PS5, so I'm wishing you luck here. So again, I've got a gift card for $300 from Amazon and another PlayStation 5 to give out right now. Reminder, you do need to be live and present here to win on today's MegaCast. And without further ado, our next lucky winners today are... First, for the gift card, Tony Nguyen from Texas. And the second, for the PlayStation 5, this is going out to Brian Fodre, hopefully I pronounced that right, from Pennsylvania. Congratulations. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And do not forget, there are plenty of prizes still in the queue to be given out, so don't give up hope quite yet. All right, well, let's keep this show on the road. Next up on today's MegaCast, we have our friends here at Lacework who are bringing us a timely and practical presentation on how to reduce cloud identity risk. Now, we've got a great crew here. We've got Phil Blues, Research Manager of Cloud Security, IDC, and Tony Karam. He's a Product Marketing Lead, and they'll also be bringing on their colleague for a short segment, Andy Schneider. So, Phil, Andy, Tony, thank you so much for being here, and the floor is yours. Go ahead and take it away.
Great to be with you, and it's such a great topic, and those are great points. And for me, it all starts with digital transformation. So digital transformation has driven the move to the cloud for the past several years, which resulted in an initial lift and shift approach, as I think we're all aware, with suboptimal application performance and security gaps kind of left in its wake, right? So now we're in this digital business era where revenue is generated by digital products, services, and experiences. There is a focus on clear and measurable business outcomes. So partly as a result of digital transformation, we now have the complexity of multi-cloud, right? We have the complexity of hybrid cloud, and we have the complexity of cloud-native applications that dramatically increases the attack surface, which needs protection. I like to think about it this way. It's about visibility, it's about insights, and it's about action. To have the visibility into an organization's cloud assets, how many, where are they? And this visibility must extend into identities and entitlements, as identity is the new security perimeter. IDC research has shown that compromised credentials through phishing is the leading cause for breaches. Next, insights into cloud asset relationships, and of course, ephemeral workloads and serverless functions that are often added without the knowledge of security teams. And then actions, which normally require multiple lines of business being involved, sometimes leading to organizational friction. Now, you may also be wondering about cloud security overspend, a hot topic for sure. And while security spending is the least affected among IT spending, according to IDC research, and is increasing for most organizations, there is a 24-hour news cycle reminding us of high-profile breaches and supply chain attacks. So when organizations are asked to describe their stance on security in the public cloud compared to security that can be delivered on-premise, the majority believe that public cloud is more secure, and that's for good reason. All of the benefits we're familiar with by now, including infrastructure cost savings, faster application deployment, scalability, and access to 24/7 trained and certified security practitioners. But then organizations began questioning their own security posture readiness, and this gets back to the security posture comments that you made at the beginning. It's been a long-held belief that the less mature organizations or digital laggards whose compliance standards may slow the adoption of new technologies were more at risk and susceptible to attacks. So we put this to the test. In IDC's December 2022 U.S. Cloud Security Survey across major industry verticals, which focused on mature organizations, and let me stress that again, mature, 30% of respondents rated their organization's security posture as planning phase or low. An additional 28% cited only moderate protection. So that's a combined total of 58% describing their posture as moderate or less than moderate.
For me, it's concerning that your research shows that most of the mature organizations still are in an immature security state. If we look at cloud security, I think I know why it's the case. So if you think about large organizations that move to the cloud, many proceed with a lift and shift approach. So they try to go with lift and shift to the cloud. And if you think about a security team, if you just want to, from a digital business, so the digital transformation, you just want to modernize your business and your digital product that you have, maybe a web shop or an e-commerce application, a banking application, whatever. Moving to the cloud means that from a security perspective, you have no longer one infrastructure to protect, but you have two infrastructures to protect. And in the business case of that digital transformation, usually no one says, oh, we need double the amount of security people for that. Because it's maybe we have a good security team, but they are good network security engineers. And maybe we don't need the network security engineers in the cloud anymore. So I think no one is doing that calculation in their business case. So with that lift and shift, what is happening that many security teams and CISOs out there, they have to deal with that cloud thing suddenly. But in their mindset, they are still in a perimeter. They have network protections, a very network-centric security approach. And also from how you do security, it's very hierarchical. You have a CISO, you have a security team, you have to ask for permission. If you then enter the DevOps world, well, asking for permission is not the normal thing that you do. They do, and they do it very quickly. And suddenly in the cloud, things are data and identity driven. So the network disappears completely. So if you then have a security team that tries to lift and shift their security mindset, so you have to have a firewall and you put a cloud firewall in front and the problem is solved, well, that's not the case. So reality looks differently. So I think that's where then CISOs and security teams realize, okay, we have to start over. And they start from, let's get some visibility, what we have. Then we move over and we do a configuration and we do things right from the beginning on, either on the left side or on runtime, so the posture management. And then they move very slowly to the right. Personally, I think that's it's an approach that I understand also from budget perspective, but it's the wrong way how to do that. So if you have a child and that is your digital crown jewel, and you have a wooden house that might be your cloud infrastructure, you can clean it up as often as you want. You might want to put a sensor in it, a fire sensor, in case there is a fire in there. So many start on the left and then slowly move to the right. And there's that hype around shift left, and shift left is good, but you framed it right with shield right is very important. So you can also start with shield right, and then you're not secure, but you know if something happens, if a fire breaks out, I see that, I can react to that, and I have enough time to really clean up the mess that has been created. And I think that is not happening. Organizations really jump to the left and very slowly move to the right. And in that time, and this can take like 2 years or 3 years in a large organization, they would even not detect any attack. And this is, for me, concerning. And the second thing is, if you then come in with your network mindset, many don't understand that it's all about data and identity. And we talk a lot about identity today. It's identities. You have to find these toxic combinations and other things. So identities are the key to be successful in the cloud.
I think we all agree, everybody agrees that, cloud hardening your cloud security and compliance posture is critical, right? Part and parcel of that, it's how are you configuring identities, whether those are human identities or machine identities across your cloud. So let's talk a little bit about what challenges organizations are faced with in managing, in trying to control identity risk specifically. I heard you both talk about the fact that I think identities become the new security perimeter in cloud, right? Because all the traditional sort of perimeter defenses have been sort of stripped away in cloud. They don't exist anymore. But managing identities and access has always been a challenge, even on-prem, and it's just become exponentially more difficult in cloud. And a couple of reasons I hear for that is the sheer number of permissions. So trying to understand who can access what, when, why, and how. Right in cloud, just with the 3 large hyperscale providers out there. I heard the statistic, there's probably somewhere like north of 40,000 permissions, right, that they offer. The other challenge organizations seem to be faced with is the fact that, a lot of research will show most organizations, especially large organizations, have a multi-cloud strategy, Well, the fact that the large cloud service providers all speak their own identity and access management language, they all have their own taxonomies, really creates an issue, right, for organizations on, how do they track identities across these platforms, right? It becomes really difficult for them to do that. I think the other thing is we've heard is the fact that identity, how we define digital identities has completely changed in cloud. Earlier, for on-prem services and applications, mostly we were concerned about human beings, right? Human identities and what they had access to. But a simple cloud deployment can introduce thousands of non-human or machine identities that are constantly changing, right? Unlike us as human beings, we don't change all that much. The profile of those machine identities and service identities can be constantly changing. They may only live for seconds or minutes, right, at a time. And then finally, I think, just the nature of cloud development in DevOps and the automation and the autonomy that developers are given these days from a self-service perspective really puts security folks on their heels a bit, because trying to understand what permissions developers may or may not need, and then likely developers and the like trying to understand, how to assign permissions or entitlements to resources or services in the cloud can be really challenging on the front side. So, typically I hear a lot about organizations just overly privileging, right, or creating over permissions for users. And they all have good intentions, right? They all say, hey, look, we'll just give everybody everything and then we'll kind of scale back from there. The reality, though, I think is what we hear is that scale back never really happens. People don't go back and don't do that job. So certainly would love to get your sort of feet on the street perspective, Andy, on kind of what you're hearing folks are really challenged with, if what I said sort of resonates, or if there are other things you're hearing about.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are like these two type of, you could say, customers. You have startups that raise money. They build an MVP to show the investors this is like the new product. And everyone knows that you should, if you have a successful working MVP, you should throw it away and rebuild it correctly. And this means not running it with highest privileges. This is never happening, because then if they raise money, they have to rush forward. Then they have to go to market and other problems. So they are overprivileged. The same happens for the ones moving to the cloud, because no one said, okay, now you got this thing running. You have all the time in the world to rebuild it and make it correct. So this is just not happening. Now, the real concern with development teams is they are willing to remove privileges, but they fear that it breaks the application. And no one wants to break the application. So you have a lot of, from a security perspective, you have no chance, because if you say, we will do a project that is actually not providing any revenue directly, but we will slow down that, and most probably our digital product will break and we will lose revenue. No one would do that. So everyone hates the topic. It has been the same in the past. These were humans, but now it's really like your whole product won't work anymore. So the real struggle is finding out which privileges can I remove and nothing will happen. They want to have the proof. And this did not exist in the past. So that's I think the real challenge on the one hand. And the other thing is, if you build everything from scratch in the cloud, it will look beautiful in the beginning, and you just have to wait for a couple of years and it will look messy like on-prem, just to say it like that. So it's many are not aware that if you don't do it right now, it really become an enormous problem later.
That's a lot to unpack, really. And, you gave some great examples, I think, of the overprivilege by default and lacking visibility in accounts and not being able to determine the identity risk and the right sizing of the permissions. So first, I think organizations need to unpack the nature of those entitlements. And the fact that the number of entitlements is really overwhelming many security teams brings to light the division of tracking those entitlements between humans, or the users, and machines, consisting of serverless IoT devices and the like. Tony touched on this earlier. IDC research on this topic does confirm that among organizations which have a current KIM solution, 2/3 are tracking non-human entitlements. And considering the highly ephemeral nature of non-human workloads, as Tony mentioned earlier, which can last for minutes or seconds, commonly referred to as invisible, makes this percentage likely higher. So these challenges are compounded by multi-cloud, the correlation of entitlement data with other security findings, and regulatory compliance reporting. So entitlements which are not managed and tracked properly can lead to those overly excessive permissions, creating visibility gaps and opening the door to the cybercriminal, the malicious insider threat, or the unintended employee negligence, which I think organizations are just having a really tough time with. So there is also this growing talent shortage, adding fuel to the fire, which I think we're all very familiar with. IDC research shows that in response to the growing talent shortage, organizations are using non-security staff. Think of IT admins to handle security. Just think about that for a second. Once we start dealing with challenges of IAM, identity access management, and cloud infrastructure entitlements management, or KIM, which are really hard to begin with, you can go off the rails pretty quickly.
So we're seeing KIM as becoming a foundational component to those platforms going forward. So love to pick your brain. Both of you, Phil, let's start with you, on what you're seeing relative to best practices and core capabilities for this new emerging set of capabilities around KIM.
So when I think of a modern KIM roadmap, there are 5 signposts which should be considered. You have to evaluate the net effective permissions, so those permissions that are programmatically given directly through a resource, or resource-based permissions through a group, or assume transient roles that give permissions. That there must be full visibility at a granular level of cloud identities, resources, and related permissions. Second would be to enforce least privileged access, as you mentioned, or LPA. And that goal of LPA is to assign the user only the necessary privileges and access to resources to complete a task, no more, no less. LPA helps to further limit attack surfaces, which I think is really key, by reducing the total number of exploitable vulnerabilities with the establishment of those least privileged controls. What was once a dreaded manual task is now becoming automated. So in concert with LPA, KIM delivers improved security, capacity planning, audit compliance, and the ability to maintain control over licensing conditions. Third, you need to manage and track those excessive permissions. And this is something that I'm going to keep coming back to. Organizations must be able to view used versus unused permissions. For example, a standard industry use case may be the mining of all log data. You need to review all used, unused permissions, assess the observability of usage, and right-size the permissions accordingly. This can have a tremendous impact not only on the compliance with security and privacy regulatory requirements, but also in your go-to-market strategy by not blocking that crucial access for developers. And as developers gain confidence that their workflow will not be interrupted by security mandates, the trust and confidence will grow, reducing that security developer team friction that we talked about earlier. And it opens the door to shifting security left and shielding right. So we have protection throughout the entire software development lifecycle. And fourth, you need to prioritize proactively. I think in order to cut through the noise of false alerts and focus on the most severe threats, modern KIM solutions must map identities to an attack path based on severity.
The worst projects in my life as a CISO were identity projects where we did a cleanup. The cleanup meant you had a list, like a sheet of hundreds of accounts that had maybe high privileges, and you had to go to the people and say, we want to remove that. So these projects took like sometimes years, but they were highly effective. But it took years. You had to fight all the time, and you only created enemies. So you couldn't have lunch with them anymore for a couple of months until they calmed down, that you removed their admin privileges or whatever. So this has been the past. But these were just a few hundreds of accounts or thousands of accounts. If you now look at the cloud, it's tens of thousands of accounts because everything is an identity. So this becomes even more difficult. And I remember in my last company, the typical incidents were like, oh, there has been a leaked API key somewhere. So now what? What is the impact of that? So if you think about what you described, the attack path, what is the impact of that? API key. Who had access to that? And what happens with the API key afterwards? Which data are affected? Which business units are affected? So having that immediate visibility is very important in that fast-paced world that we live in. So if an incident happens, you want to understand as a security team, what do I need to do now, right now? What is impacted by that? What is the right playbook that I can apply here? So it's part of KIEM to give you that answer. So a good KIEM solution for me is not like a standalone solution, but gives the information, the context to other disciplines that we have, like attack path is also used for vulnerability management to show where's that and what might be affected by that. So you can enrich that there, but you can also enrich additional information. So if you know how an identity behaves, this is really helpful because you find out, well, even if the vendor says, your third party, you need, let's say, 100 privileges granted to that, maybe you never use them. And it wouldn't be the first time that we would have third-party breaches from vendors that the root cause was just over-privileges that were in there. So you can reduce that. So a good KIEM solution by itself identifies and analyzes what is being used versus what is being granted. But the magic is if you then enrich the other parts, because it's so complex, like I explained, so the security teams are mostly overwhelmed with cloud security because it's an on-top discipline for them that they have to take care of. I think it's important for them that they know where to focus on. Is it now patching these 30 hosts, or is it reducing the privileges from these identities without the danger of breaking anything? So helping teams to focus on the right thing, what to do next, I think is the most important part. In the past, I never knew, is it now reducing the privileges? Is it now the important part to do that? Or is it patching? Or is it something else? Is it awareness training? You just did what you had to do, but the tools today in the cloud, they can help you. They can analyze everything and can show you identities are not good, but maybe you have everything messed up so dramatically. Maybe first start with step ABC. So, and the CNAPP platforms, they shall provide that, but they are not only effective if they really share their context in between. So if we look, for example, at compromised identity or compromised credentials, you want to understand the full impact of that and the full picture. And that is not just limited to the identity, it's also what's happening around that. Where there are some misconfigurations, how does the attack path look like? What might be impacted? Are other alerts generated, for example, from agents that do workload protection? That something is also happening on a host. To get that full picture, that's for me the key to do that, to really help security teams running the best remediation or the best playbook at that time. Otherwise, people spend a lot of time with analyzing what might have happened. So I've seen very often these alerts coming in, and then you call a external security company that is running a forensic investigation. And then after maybe 1 week, you know what to do. And that's too late. You have to do things much quicker today. But if I would now start in the cloud, for me, it's really looking, and that's what I see with customers also. They really start with the most risky accounts, for example, or identities that are in their environment. So they can really say, these are really the most riskiest ones. There might be toxic combinations, even if you think this is not an admin user. With all the roles that are attached to that, it might have admin privileges or the highest privileges in the organization. So finding these and giving back the focus is the key. And that's what I see with customers. If they start with KIEM, that's what they like. They see in one view where to start and what they have to focus on right now. That's where the tools really can help, especially if you combine it with the surrounding disciplines like CSPM, KSPM. It really helps you to focus. And like I said in the beginning, and Phil also said that shield right is very important. So adding that detection capabilities is key, because every or almost any attack in the cloud will have identities in there. So having that shield right approach on top of that, KIEM and CSPM, I think, is the best way to be successful.
All right, incredible. Thank you all for your presentation and for being here. What a great crew, Tony, Andy, Philip. That was really great. We are at time, so we won't be able to have you three sticking around for a live Q&A session, but we will have those questions answered after the fact. So if you do have your question in there for Lacework, no worries. The team's going to reach out and make sure you get some information. And if you are looking for some additional information about the Lacework solution, I've got another poll up there. Feel free to answer that. Your feedback is so valuable. And again, you're going to get exactly what you're looking for in a timely fashion. So make use of that poll while it is still up. Now, you may also want to hop over to the handouts tab there. You can check out the Lacework website and some of the resources that they have got there for you. And we also have some prizes to give away. So exciting time here on the MegaCast. I'm still holding my breath, have my fingers crossed for those of you who have been chanting in the comments or in the questions section about these PS5s. I know it's pretty exciting stuff. And with that, just a reminder, you do need to be live and present and lucky here at today's MegaCast in order to win. And so hopefully you hear your name now. Our next winners, first is the gift card from Natasha, or for Natasha Hawkins from Texas. That's a $300 Amazon gift card. And the next PlayStation 5 is going out to Braden Walter from Michigan. Congratulations to both of you. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar today. And don't forget, there are a few more prizes to give out. So don't lose hope, keep excitement, and hopefully it'll be you next up who are winning some of these awesome prizes. Now, with that, I'm actually going to hand things over to my fellow moderator, Keith Ward, who is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to let him bring on our next presenting team and wrap up the day with you on today's MegaCast. Keith, are you ready?
I am tanned and rested and ready to go.
And rested and ready. Where have you been?
Not so tanned. I'm Irish, mostly extraction. So okay. I'm more red.
You have like a
tan.
tiny peach glow about you.
Exactly. But
Beautiful.
yeah, ready to fill your big shoes, Mackenzie. Thank you so much for that undeserved introduction.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here, and I'll let you take it away, Keith.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, everyone. So as I said, big shoes to fill here from Mackenzie, and I appreciate everything he has done on the MegaCast today. Looks like you folks are having a great time, and we are going to continue to keep those good times rolling with our final presentation in the MegaCast, everyone. And this one comes from TierPoint. Presenting for TierPoint today is Derek Townsend, a cloud solutions architect. Derek is ready to go also. Thank you for being here today, Derek. It's a delight to have you. I am now going to turn this puppy over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today. My name is Derek Townsend, and I'm a cloud solutions architect with TierPoint. I am here to discuss with you achieving security best practices in public cloud, chiefly Azure and Amazon Web Services. All right, a little bit about myself. I've been in IT for over 20 years. I've been an architect for 8 years, and I've been dealing primarily with AWS and Azure. This has been around designing solutions for customers related to IaaS and PaaS services. And we're ready to begin. Thank you. I would like to now discuss the organization that I am with. I work for a company called TierPoint, and we are a data center services provider. We have 43 data centers across the United States, but in addition to that, we also provide professional and managed services for both AWS and Azure environments. The first topic I would like to discuss is the public cloud shared responsibility model. This model is a framework that outlines the security obligations of both the public cloud provider, in this case Amazon Web Services, and their customers. In this model, AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, meaning they handle the infrastructure, hardware, software, and networking components. On the other hand, customers are responsible for security in the cloud, which includes safeguarding their data, applications, and configurations. This approach allows both parties to focus on what they do best while still ensuring a comprehensive security environment. AWS provides tools and services to help customers meet their security responsibilities. One of the key components of any environment, but in particular public cloud, is identity and access management, which includes strengthening authentication and managing access effectively. It is important to utilize strong authentication mechanisms. It is important also to use complex passwords and to regularly update security certificates. When able, it benefits an organization to utilize SAML or OAuth authentication as well. Role-based access control is a feature of public cloud environments, and it's important to define user roles carefully and to assign minimum necessary permissions for a user to perform their job. As a result of this, it is also important to regularly audit role assignments. One of the key features of public cloud environments is multi-factor authentication. It's important to always enable multi-factor authentication for any administrative account and also to encourage or enforce MFA for all of your users. When necessary, you can utilize a hardware-based token. I would say the key takeaways of these IAM features and functionalities is that strong authentication and fine-grained permissions are essential for robust cloud security, and that MFA significantly enhances user authentication and should be standard practice. I'd like to touch on the technologies that are involved in both AWS and Azure also for managing identity and access management. The name in Amazon is pretty straightforward. The service itself is called AWS IAM. It helps to control access to any resource in AWS and allows for one to manage users, groups, and permissions within one or more AWS accounts. It also provides features such as MFA, which we had mentioned earlier, identity federation, and access control policies. On the Azure side, we have Azure Active Directory, and this is a cloud-based identity solution created by Microsoft. It has features as well, like multi-factor authentication and single sign-on, and also utilizes role-based access control. It can also integrate an on-premises Active Directory controller with cloud-based applications, and it supports various protocols, including OAuth, SAML, and OpenID. Network isolation and segmentation are crucial in public cloud environments for several reasons. Chief among these are security. By isolating networks, one can limit the attack surface area. If one segment is compromised, the impact can be contained, making it harder for attackers to move laterally across the environment. Regulatory requirements also often mandate that sensitive data is isolated from other types of data, and network segmentation can help achieve this. Smaller segmented networks also are easier to monitor, manage, and troubleshoot. In addition to this, AWS security groups and Azure network security groups serve similar purposes but are part of each of these different cloud ecosystems. Both act as a virtual firewall to control inbound and outbound traffic to network interfaces, VMs, and other resources. Security groups are stateful, meaning that if you allow an incoming request from an IP, the response is automatically allowed regardless of the outbound rules. Security groups typically are associated with elastic network interfaces on the AWS side and can be applied to multiple instances, and they are typically also scoped to a VPC specifically. On the Azure side, these are also stateful security groups, but they will allow you to assign priority to rules. And they come with a set of rules that can be overridden by creating additional rules with higher priority. And these are typically associated with subnets or a network interface and are scoped at the virtual network level. AWS WAF, AWS Shield are both services that protect applications running in AWS. WAF, which is Web Application Firewall, protects those web apps from various attacks by filtering and monitoring HTTP and PS traffic. And they're customizable because they allow you to create custom rules to block, allow, or monitor web requests based on various conditions like IP addresses, HTTP headers, and so on. And they also integrate with other AWS services. AWS Shield itself was designed to protect against distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks. And Shield provides additional security against larger and more sophisticated attacks, in addition to offering a 24/7 DDoS response team at AWS. Azure Sentinel is a cloud-native security information and event management platform that collects data across users, devices, applications, and infrastructure, both on-prem and across multiple cloud providers. It'll use AI and analytics to identify security anomalies and potential threats, and it allows for automated responses to security incidents. These services are essential for enhancing cloud security, offering various levels of protection to meet different organizational needs. I wanted to illustrate here what a sort of typical traffic flow may look like for an application, where we would have a client submit a request to a web server located in this case in Azure. The application gateway would intercept that packet and examine it. The packets passed inspection, the gateway would send those to the backend VM. When that packet hits Azure, a user-defined route in the app gateway would push it to the firewall, at which point the firewall would run security checks on the packets, and if they passed the tests, they would forward those packets to the app VM. The VM responds and sets the destination IP to the app gateway. User-defined routes in the VM subnet redirect those packets to the Azure firewall, at which point the firewall forwards the packets to the app gateway and the gateway answers the client. Encryption is a critical aspect of security in public cloud environments for several reasons, chiefly data privacy, compliance, data integrity, and access control. Encrypting data ensures that even if unauthorized access occurs, the data remains unreadable without a key. Many regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, and PCI require data to be encrypted both at rest and in transit when stored in public cloud environments. Encryption mechanisms can help verify that data has not been tampered with, preserving its integrity. And coupled with proper key management, encryption helps to enforce access controls. Only authorized personnel with the correct decryption keys can access the data. Encryption protects sensitive information from being exposed in shared or multi-tenant cloud environments. And in the event of a data breach, encrypted data is significantly less vulnerable, as it would require additional computational efforts to decrypt. By employing encryption strategies, organizations can significantly enhance the security posture of their data and applications in public cloud environments. Classifying data and sensitive information in public cloud environments is important for several key reasons. Security being the chief reason. Knowing which data is sensitive helps in applying appropriate security measures like encryption or access controls to protect that data. In addition to that, we have compliance, which we had mentioned earlier, resource allocation regions. Not all data requires the same level of security. Classification allows you to allocate security resources more effectively, focusing on the most critical data. Access control, classification guides who should and should not have access to particular sets of data, reducing the risk of unauthorized access. And obviously auditing and monitoring. Classified data can be monitored more closely for any unauthorized access or suspicious activities, helping in quicker incident detection and response. Knowing the importance and sensitivity of data helps in making decisions about its storage, retention, and eventual deletion as well. Proper classification of data and sensitive information is foundational for a robust security posture and effective data management in public cloud environments. Aligning public cloud security with regulatory standards involves several steps and best practices. Firstly, it's important to identify applicable regulations that apply to your organization, such as HIPAA or PCI. It's also important to conduct a gap analysis to assess your current security posture against the requirements of the regulatory standards to identify gaps. As we had mentioned in a previous slide, data classification, encryption, and access control also factor in to your overall strategy for aligning public cloud security with a regulatory standard. Documentation is important, obviously, for auditing reasons and maintaining an audit trail. Maintaining detailed audit trails of data access or modification are often required for audits, and conducting periodic security audits and risk assessments ensure ongoing compliance and identify areas for improvement. Lastly, developing and maintaining an incident response plan that aligns with a regulatory requirement or standard is significant and also required for reporting and mitigating security incidents. Many cloud providers offer tools to help maintain compliance. Among these tools are services such as Azure Policy, Azure Blueprints, AWS Artifact, AWS CloudTrail, amongst others. By taking a comprehensive and structured approach, one can effectively align a public cloud with the security measures that apply to their vertical or sector, therefore reducing risk and ensuring legal compliance. Both AWS and Azure offer a wide range of security services designed to help organizations protect their cloud-based assets. On the AWS side, we have IAM, Shield, and WAF, which we've already discussed. In addition to those services, we also have Amazon Guard Duty, which is a threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activity. AWS CloudTrail, which logs API calls, providing a history of changes to resources. And Security Hub, which is a centralized view of security alerts and compliance statuses. On the Azure side, we have Azure Key Vault, which stores and manages sensitive information like keys, secrets, and certificates. Security Center, which is a central hub for monitoring and managing the security of resources. Sentinel, which we've previously mentioned. Azure Firewall also, which we previously mentioned, which is a stateful firewall service. Azure Policy allows an organization to set requirements and enforce those requirements for any sort of resource that exists within a subscription. And Azure Monitor, which is a collector that analyzes and acts on telemetry data from Azure and on-premises resources. Both AWS and Azure offer comprehensive sets of security services designed to address various aspects of cloud security, from identity and access management to data protection and threat detection. Embedding security into DevOps processes, commonly known as DevSecOps, is particularly crucial in public cloud environments. Here's how an organization can achieve scalable protection. Using infrastructure as code templates to define cloud resource configurations ensures that they are consistently secure by design. Tools like CloudFormation, ARM templates, and Terraform help to achieve this end. Integrating security scanning tools into the CI/CD pipeline to automatically scan code and cloud configurations for vulnerabilities is also important. Services like AWS Code Pipeline with built-in security checks or Azure DevOps with Azure Security Center can help. If you're using containers, ensure that they are scanned for vulnerabilities. Solutions like AWS ECR or Azure Container Registry offer integrated scanning. Automatically validate that the infrastructure that you're creating follows compliance requirements utilizing services such as AWS Config or Azure Policy. It's important also to establish feedback mechanisms between security and DevOps teams to continuously improve security postures. By integrating these practices into DevOps processes, organizations can ensure that security is not a bottleneck, but an enabler of faster and safer software delivery in public cloud environments. Disaster recovery in public cloud environments is critical not just from an availability perspective, but also from a security standpoint. Data protection is a key item as a part of this. In the event of a cyber attack such as ransomware, data corruption, a robust DR plan can allow organizations to restore from a clean backup, ensuring data integrity and availability. In addition to that, it can be used to mitigate a DDoS attack, provides for quick incident response, and also allows for isolation and investigation. In the event of a breach, compromised systems can be isolated and traffic can be rerouted to DR environments. In addition to that, many regulations mandate that organizations have a DR plan in place to protect sensitive data. Cloud-based DR solutions also offer the flexibility to simulate disaster scenarios, allowing organizations to test their security protocols in a controlled environment without affecting production systems. In essence, while DR is typically associated with business continuity, its importance to security cannot be understated. A well-designed DR plan in a public cloud environment acts as a safety net, ensuring that organizations can swiftly recover from security incidents while minimizing adverse impacts. Security updates and patch management are essential in public cloud environments for several key reasons. Chief among those are vulnerability mitigation and compliance. Software inevitably has vulnerabilities, and regularly updating and patching your cloud services and applications help to close those gaps before they can be exploited. Many regulations like GDPR or HIPAA require up-to-date security measures, which often include regular patching. This helps to reduce the attack surface area. Often outdated software becomes a target for cyber criminals. By applying updates and patches, one minimizes the attack surface. In addition to that, a security breach due to outdated software can significantly damage the reputation of an organization. Keeping systems updated shows a commitment to customer data security. In addition to that, organizations that maintain a robust security posture by staying updated are better positioned to compete in the marketplace where consumers are increasingly concerned about data security. Both AWS and Azure offer their own security update and patch management systems, chiefly AWS Systems Manager and Azure Update Management. Leveraging automation tools can be important as well to schedule and apply the patches. In addition to that, monitoring patching status is crucial to ensuring that all of the affected systems are updated in a timely manner. Wanted to touch briefly on some lessons learned from past security incidents in both AWS and Azure. Some of these items include unsecured AWS S3 buckets. These expose customer data, and that can often lead to issues or hijacking in some cases. The mitigation plan for this is implementing bucket policies and utilizing AWS config for automated compliance checks to ensure that it's meeting the requirements. In addition to that, oftentimes Azure SQL databases can be exposed where they're publicly accessible, have a public endpoint. A mitigation plan for this is to deploy Azure Firewall and configure proper network security groups to limit access to these SQL servers. In addition to that, oftentimes we will see denial of service attacks from other regions on customers within the United States or elsewhere. These manifest themselves in sustained DDoS attacks. We can utilize services such as Azure DDoS protection for network layer security in these events. And finally, for brute force intrusion, oftentimes actors can get unauthorized access through an OpenSSH port on a virtual machine. It's important to close those ports and implement something like AWS WAF for real-time application layer protection. Thank you all for joining today. We hope you found this presentation helpful. If you would like to speak to someone about your cloud needs, you can reach us at www.tierpoint.com or sales@tierpoint.com. We have also listed our phone number on this slide as well. Thank you again and have a good day.
And thank you, Derek. A great presentation. Always love seeing what TierPoint is doing. And now I've just put up the last poll question of the MegaCast for you. Please give us your feedback on the additional resources you would like to see from TierPoint. Now, we did have a bunch of questions that we can't get to right here, but Derek and the TierPoint team will be getting back to you. So do not fear if you had a question and it did not get answered. You will be hearing from them. I'd also like to remind everyone about the handouts. We've got a great PDF from TierPoint that is a brief on managed public cloud solutions. Check that out now in the couple of minutes that we have left here. And thanks to everyone who has voted in the poll, and keep on doing that while I give away the last 3 prizes of the event. That's right. I have the pleasure of giving away a $300 Amazon gift card and our last 2 PlayStation 5s. The gift card winner is Martin Brija from New Jersey. And the winners of our final grand prizes are Kelsey Briggs-Deneen from Illinois and Adam Radloff from Arizona. Congratulations to all of our winners today. We had a whole bunch of them. Love giving away good free stuff to everyone. So with that, we are about out of time here, folks. But were you watching the things today and thinking, you know what, this kind of thing would be really good for my company? The platform and everything, the way we present it, I think is unique here. And if this is something that you might be interested in for your platform or solution, we would love to hear from you. We have got hundreds of events each year, including custom ones that we can make just specifically for you and your product or solution. Let us know at connect@actualtechmedia.com so we can get in touch. We would love to talk to you more. If you like this Cloud MegaCast today, you should know that there is another cloud event happening tomorrow. It starts at noon Eastern time. which is 9 a.m. Pacific time, as you probably know, and it's about the increasingly important topic of repatriation. If that looks like something you'd be interested in, sign up when this event is over, which is pretty much right now, everyone. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together such awesome presentations and demos, for their work in the Q&As today. I want to thank them all for making this event possible, and that includes CyberArk, Rubrik, Lacework, and TierPoint. And finally, last but never ever least, I want to thank all of you for attending the MegaCast from Actual Tech Media, for all of your great questions, and for spending a fairly good chunk of your day with us. You are the reasons we do this, and we love spending the time with you to do. That's it for me today, folks. I can't wait to see you in the next event. Have a great rest of your day.